the one thing I'm watching in particular is that the administration so far and watching Trump has been what I call the big grift. Watching him just stuffing money into his family's pockets with, these crypto deals, that ridiculous dinner he had.
I was watching that.
And,
Yeah.
he's going to, make as much money as he can because Donald Trump has always been about money even more than power. And, I don't think the American people love, overt corruption, unspooling in front of their eyes the way it has. So, that may, contribute to a change in the political winds.
Jill, why don't we stick with that Biden story? Because
Okay, sure.
as I was reading the book, I found myself wondering: am I reading history or politics? And maybe you could define which one it is for me.
Well, it's politics. Neither Jake Tapper nor Alex Thompson are historians. But, I think the whole autopsy that's going on of the period before Biden finally dropped out of the race and, Kamala Harris's defeat is under, a lot of scrutiny, not just from Original Sin. There are three other books by journalists that have come out at more or less the same time. And I read this morning that the New York Times is about to launch a big examination of the trajectory of Biden and the 2024 campaign, which I bet will have, of course, new revelations, which because this is now caught fire and, the media is kind of delighting in every new development, that the Times pieces will get a lot of attention too. And, Biden's legacy is I think quite ruined at this point. People are sad about his terrible cancer diagnosis, but it only underscores that he had no business running for re-election.
Yeah, there's sort of reading the reports around it and indeed the book. There's a sense of a sort of grotesque irresponsibility by people around him, if not himself, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, my question from the beginning, because I wrote about, sort of the cover up or inattention to Biden's decline very early. And where was the press? Jake Tapper covered every minute of the 2024 election, and he and other reporters also should take a bit of responsibility for not vigorously investigating, the president's decline.
I don't know if President Trump is held under a different gaze in terms of judgment and of mental acuity, but this morning's post online was Happy Memorial Day to all, including the scum, who he blames for America's decline. This is a Memorial Day for you, Jill, not for me. I'm not an American citizen. And
right.
A message like that, how does that resonate or make you feel?
Well, with people who don't like Trump, it resonates in a very crass way. It's not the usual presidential message on a Memorial Day.
No.
And, with his supporters, it will just be received as Trump being Trump, and they love him. So it will be a usually polarized reaction to his silly posting for Memorial Day. I think, one thing that I wanted to mention this morning was, the very serious matter of the president's war on, some of the best American
Hmm.
universities. Thursday is going to be commencement day at Harvard, and it is the university that I graduated from, and I think is responsible for many, important research breakthroughs and scholarly advances. I think it plays a very integral part in American culture and intellectual affairs. And it's really, to say unprecedented has almost lost its meaning with Donald Trump. But the way he is just punishing and pummeling Harvard, seemingly in an effort to destroy it, is alarming and wrong. And I'm just glad that the university has not buckled and has stood up as best it can to his
And
attacks.
is that because I've been watching that story closely, and not just Harvard, but the other universities that are getting whacked? Is that snobbery, or is it culture war?
Well, it's not snobbery. People have speculated that Trump has some kind of particular chip on his
That's semi
shoulder
inverted
at
snobbery. Yes, yeah,
Harvard. Yeah, that he might not have been able to get
you're
in,
right.
or he Harvard envy or whatever. But it is Trump's campaign was very much against the American quote unquote elite. And I think when he uses the word scum, he includes, intellectual elites, and there's no bigger symbol of it than
Mm,
Harvard.
mm.
And so I think it's more, he wants to, destroy all of the major institutions and power centers of, the traditional elite in the United States.
And
And
yeah,
this is currently the tip of the spear.
and people like you who just have absolutely just no truck with Donald Trump, you don't want him there, you wish he hadn't been president clearly, and all the rest of it. Do you feel, as a matter of interest, this, even though it's very soon into his term of office, his second term, do you feel that this is going to be 4 years and done, and we move on with the different back to kind of business as a slightly unusual, but certainly different playing pitch? Or do you feel that the first domino has fallen and that we're in for Trump be MAGA, uh, 8 years, maybe beyond? Has everything changed, in other words?
It's absolutely, I hate to keep saying this
Yeah.
too early to say
Yeah.
because, there hasn't been time for negative reaction to many of his moves to coalesce. And the one thing I'm watching in particular is that the administration so far and watching Trump has been what I call the big grift, watching him just stuffing money into his family's pockets with, these crypto deals, that ridiculous dinner he had.
I was watching that.
And,
Yeah.
he's gonna, make as much money as he can because Donald Trump has always been about money even more than power. And, I don't think the American people love, overt corruption, unspooling in front of their eyes the way it has. So, that may, contribute to a change in the political winds, but it's way too early to say that that is happening.
All right, Jill. Well, thank you for your time today. Jill Abrahamson, who's the former executive editor of the New York Times. We've